So you might ask yourself, if you're not a teacher, why should I care about History Day? And it seems that I would argue that everyone who works in any kind of historical agency, history museum, library that deals with history should be involved with History Day. It's really important. And if you want to be involved with the next generation of historians, you want to train them, how many of you have ever heard kids say history is boring? And it's boring because the way it's taught in school is really boring. And they don't know how necessarily to make it interesting. So we're going to talk about a little bit about History Day.
Who are you anyway?
Oh, who am I? My name is Gretchen Sorin, and I'm the director of the Cooperstown graduate program. And these are two of my brilliant colleagues also that work at the Cooperstown graduate program, and I'll let them introduce themselves when we get to it. I want to make sure that I don't overdo my 10 minutes. Okay. So what is National History Day? First of all, it's a program for kids who are in grades 6 through 12. It's a competition in which students choose a topic. And one of the reasons it's so successful is because the kids get to choose their own topic. They're not being told they have to study the Erie Canal or they have to study something else. They choose the topic they want to research. They work either as individuals or, as you can see here, they work in groups to develop one of 5 things: a paper, a website, a documentary film, an exhibition, or a performance. So while they're learning history, they're also learning how to do those other things. They must use primary sources, and they must analyze them. And there are local, regional, state, and national competitions. So as the students move up, they're going to different competitions and dealing with different competitors. So they start in their local community, then they go to a regional competition, a state competition, a national and then finally the national competition. There are also, these are, by the way, the 12 regions of New York State that New York State is divided in for History Day, and each region has its own regional competition.
This region is here, thanks to these folks.
Yes, the capital region. New York State, the competition is held on the state competition. New York State History Day is held on the beautiful campus of SUNY Oneonta in April, and everyone is invited to attend. It's an absolutely amazing experience, and we'll tell you more about judging. Katie's going to talk about judging for History Day. Next slide, please. So the history of History Day, it was originally established by a professor at Case Western Reserve University in 1974 to encourage students to analyze historical events and to draw their own conclusions. It started in Cleveland, but it grew very rapidly to include 50 states, and ultimately it's an international program. There are lots of people from around the world that participate in History Day. Every year, about 600,000 students participate, starting at the local level. That includes everybody at the local level, regional, state, and national level. Next slide, please. Now, the value of History Day. If you go to the National History Day site, you can download the report that they did. They did an independent assessment, an external assessment, to determine the effectiveness of History Day. And what they found is that History Day is excellent preparation for college. They found that National History Day students perform better on all standardized tests than non-History Day students. And this included Black students, white students, and Latino students. So it's not a class-based thing. It's absolutely across the board. Kids who participate in History Day do better on standardized tests. And they do better in schools. They do better in structuring and making arguments. They are better writers, and they gain important critical thinking skills. The evidence also suggests that the skills students gain through National History Day transfers to other academic subjects. So reading, science, and math, they outperform their peers on standardized assessments. And this is in both rural areas and urban areas. National History Day inspires an interest in history and a deeper understanding of why it's important. When you see these kids on National History Day at the state level that we see, they are excited. They are thrilled to be participating in history, and they can't wait to share what they've learned with you. National History Day students, importantly, also have a more mature perspective about current events. And you are training, if you work with History Day students, you are training students to be good citizens and to be good voters, and to understand how history works and that the past informs the present. So if you go to the National History Day site, you can find, the report is called National History Day Works, and you can download the full report. Next slide, please. This is our History Day. It's in Oneonta on our campus. We get support from the Pomeroy Foundation, from Humanities New York, from the Gardner Foundation, from Wegmans and Price Chopper, and it's wild. It's absolutely wild in April when the campus is beautiful. Another slide, please. The kids do their presentations. They do their presentations. They do show their documentaries. There are kids all over campus walking around with these huge exhibitions that they've created. So Grant, I love the slide, the far slide. That was a group, they just found out that they won. And you can see how excited they were. Next slide, please. This is Nationals. Nationals is held in College Park in Maryland. More than 3,000 students participate. The New York delegation is usually about 75 students, and we stick out because we have the Statue of Liberty. So there's that's a slide of the New York delegation from last year. Yep. They have a variety of events all week, and they have a parade of the states. So during the parade of the states, the kids all make signs, they make posters, they carry the state flag, and our New Yorkers wear the Statue of Liberty crowns.
2 CGP students.
Yes, and
Right.
see, this is part of the CGP curriculum. Every single CGP, Cooperstown Graduate Program student, participates in History Day, either as a judge or working on logistics. It's just part of what we do. And several of the coordinators around the country are former students from our program. That's more, those are,
You have a couple more. Oh, there you go. Yeah.
go back to the exhibitions. One of the things about the exhibitions, I'm an exhibition curator, so for museum exhibitions, less is more. For History Day exhibitions, more is more. I've had to learn that. I had to learn that.
You only have 6 feet, right?
But I thought this was clever. That was an exhibition on Social Security.
Yeah.
That one was kind of clever. Yeah.
And this just happened.
Yeah, it's just happened.
This year we had gold crowns.
Good.
And I will tell you, the documentaries they blow my mind. They are so good. The kids do such an incredible job. Sometimes you wouldn't recognize them from a documentary that was done by a professional documentarian. They're incredible.
Okay. It takes a lot of folks to make it happen, and a lot of connections. And so, how can I be involved? I'm sure you're asking it right this minute. Well, there's a lot of ways. Judging is really a fun thing to do, and you're usually, teamed up with, 2 other people. It's usually a team of judges. There's a standard format. There's some early morning coffee, a little training about what you're going to do, and you can judge one of the 5 categories, or you could judge the runoffs in a different category if we have enough in one category that we have to have 2 sets, and then we do a runoff in the afternoon. Judging is really fun. There's a manual that's placed online that you can read through to see how you do it. There's a grid, and it really is sort of thinking through watching how these kids are thinking through, how are they using their critical thinking skills, and other kinds of elements as well. So there's a rubric that you can use. Teachers supporting kids is really a big deal, and you can support teachers too. From whatever vantage point you might happen to be, being able to involve this, embed it in your curriculum, it can work. All the good stuff, that our friends from the State Museum were talking about, this will fit right in, of course, and they're the capital region folk. Providing resources, including things like good candidates to be recorded in oral histories. In some years, we've had a lot of kids do oral histories, and they sit down with people who lived through a certain event that relates to a topic that they're working on for the theme for the year. And they do real history. It's amazing what they come up with, and then embed that in some way and use that in some way in whatever presentation form they choose.
Or they interview historians.
And they interview historians
too.
Exactly, right. So you too be on that on that resource list. Mentoring the kids, mentoring the students, helping them through the process, walking them through it. You've been doing this for a while, so some of this is not necessarily second nature, or for the teachers for that matter. So having somebody to kind of help out with that really helps the students a lot, and encouraging them. And knowing that the kids in junior high school are going to be in a very different place than the kids in high school. But they're all coming at it with their best foot forward, which is always cool to see. You can also sponsor an award as an individual, as part of a company, or part of an organization. For instance, there could be the Shenango County Historical Society Award for exhibits about cows. How about that? It can be that, specific, or it could be, and those awards are really pretty cool because not everybody can place in the first three of all of those categories. However, there's a lot of great stuff that's out there, and oftentimes we're sitting down, the judges are sitting down and looking and saying, okay, well, let's look at these special categories. Who can fill those categories that we're really, we're proud of them, we want to encourage them with that. And so that's another way that the kids are encouraged. Some organizations, I won't mention who they are, but actually have cash awards. So there's something in the envelope. Don't tell the kids who got the first three awards, because there's anything in the envelope. Anyway, spread the word. Get the word out that this is a really fun thing to do. It's great. It's a good learning experience. You can do it the kids can do it as individuals, or they can do it as a group. So whatever works for them and whatever they enjoy working with, encouraging participation, partnering with the regional coordinator. There's one. Actually, it's Stephanie Miller from here. To see, can we help with the region somehow? And training sessions. Having a session. For instance, I didn't get a chance to do this because of the teacher who was sick, but I was going to go over and do a little session for a history club at a local high school, and just talk to them about what was going on and encourage them and see if we could help the kids kind of get that in their ideas, like, that would be fun to do, and encourage them. Celebrate and showcase these kids as much as because they really deserve it. It really works. So the network. Teachers benefit from participation in the regional, state, and national competitions. Through learning themselves to use a variety of research, resources, and techniques, expanding their approaches and sources with their kids, expanding their own critical thinking skills, And just thinking about what is documentation all about anyway? How does that work? What's it look like now? Thank God for librarians and research staff, right? Those resource people are golden and love to work with these kids. In fact, we usually hear from the librarian in Cooperstown, when's it going to happen? When's it going to happen? So they're really helping them discover some of that material. And also, the libraries don't just have to be school. They can be public libraries, town libraries, colleges. I was infiltrating a university library when I was in high school. They let me in. I don't know why. And then some, as I mentioned before, some schools or classrooms have history clubs or courses that support students in their resource and research and their development of projects. They can make the project part of class, part of how you do authentic assessment. I know that's an old term. Call it something else now. But also technology sharing. I was thinking about this, about the way people network. A number of years ago, there's a lot of technology that kids use often with these things. The computers, there's equipment for recording or for editing digital kinds of things. There was a rural school in upstate New York a number of years ago that really didn't have, the bandwidth. They didn't have this kind of equipment in their little rural school. However, the BOCES organization, Bureau of Cooperative Educational Services, thank you. They were right next door. So the teachers and the sponsors kind of manipulated, the kids got over, they went over and they used the BOCES equipment. And you know what? Those kids went to state. From that little school. It always just reminds me of that. So documentaries, histories, websites. Finally, History Day and Network in Action. There is fundraising that happens for travel, for t-shirts, for supplies. Sometimes Rotary clubs kick in, Lion clubs, other organizations kick in to help make it possible for these kids to do this, especially if they qualify to come to state, or oh my gosh, if they get to go to College Park, Maryland, in June. So there's also broad themes, as was mentioned earlier, for each History Day contest, and then connect students with statewide, national, international resources, and other students who have similar interests in history and sharing their findings. National History Day and New York State History Day both have websites. They just updated the national site. There's a lot of good support material for students and teachers there on how to participate, where to find primary resources. There's a neat video on the national site I was looking at the other day about how to use a primary resource. So those are things that would be helpful for teachers to use, even if they're not going to compete. So those are the two websites, and I think that's all I have to say. But then there's one.
And I will conclude by talking about how historians working in academia, in historical agencies, archives, libraries, historic sites, other organizations can support student research through History Day.
And who are you?
Oh, we forgot to.
My name was on the slide.
I know.
I didn't
I'm
say.
Will Walker. I teach at the Cooperstown Graduate Program. I'm a public historian.
Wait, who am I?
You're Katie.
Existential.
Oh, right. I'm Katie Boardman. I also teach at the Museum Studies program. I teach the museum education and interpretation classes, designing for accessibility, and I supervise the within semester internships. So, sorry about that.
So, we have had lots of great conversations about encouraging students and teachers to think creatively and expansively about History Day topics. There are a lot of topics that appear every year. They're sort
Over and
of
over.
perennial
Some
topics.
opinions, yeah.
You had us close our eyes, and what comes to mind with the American Revolution? George Washington. Okay, let's do George Washington or Paul Revere. I used to work at the Paul Revere house.
Time for Paul Revere.
Right. But there's a whole world of topics, and as James said at the beginning, history encompasses everything, right? And what we find with National History Day students is, they don't all want to be historians, right? They won't all go on to be historians. This is something that attracts lots of different students with lots of different interests, right? And so how do we encourage that? How do we support that creativity and sort of guide them and help them to discover topics that are going to really resonate with them and maybe get beyond the textbook and perhaps move them towards more diverse and inclusive history topics, which they may not have encountered in school, in their curriculum, in their textbooks. Ways to do this are to provide examples of and access to primary sources. And those might be about the American Revolution, but they might be about the Civil Rights Movement, right? They might be about Malcolm X, we can visit classrooms to meet with students and teachers and really be a resource to kind of assist with this brainstorming process. Every National History Day has a theme, and these are usually really broad and can be interpreted in lots of different ways. But you can see here, there's sort of some things that might come to mind immediately when you see a theme like debate and diplomacy or frontiers and history, right? Frontiers, what do we think? Immediately, probably the Wild West, right? The West, westward expansion, right? Or maybe space, right? And that would be true for teachers and students as well. But there are lots of topics that can fit within these themes. So, helping students to understand or to think through how something that they might be interested in or something you might sort of plant a seed about could connect to one of these themes, right, is important. That's important work. Frontiers, I did a video for the State History website that year, and I think it's still there, kind of thinking through this, right? So I did start with, let's think about westward expansion, but maybe could we think about indigenous perspectives? Can we deconstruct that a little bit? How about frontiers in terms of ideas or in terms of movements, right? Who are sort of thinkers who are challenging people to think differently? Science and technology, right? You have a lot of students who are interested in STEM or STEAM, and there are ways to bring those topics into the picture with these themes as well. Lots and lots of places, this is not news to any of you in this room, I don't think, to find great great primary sources online. Very often, not just the students, but the teachers will need some help getting to these sources. So Consider the Source is a great site for kind of structuring that and scaffolding it and helping. But just simply sort of sitting down with teachers or students and guiding them through the process of actually finding primary sources and then doing the analysis and making those connections is really helpful. And one of the things that I recommend and I like to do is do a little bit of browsing on some of these sites, and look for the collections tab or the collections page. So some sites, like if you go to the National Archives, and if I can click here, yeah, they actually have a page set up for National History Day resources, which is wonderful. And if you go to online research, they have it broken down by topics and time periods. So, you might have a student interested in civil rights. Well, you can bring them to the National Archives website and, go right to the section where it's going to take you to like various primary sources on civil rights. So a lot of the work is done already, but on their own, students and teachers might not find these things. So we've seen some. So there, you all have resources in your region as well, and we welcome examples. We want to be able to share those out with our contacts, and certainly, this is where sort of partnering with your regional coordinator, making them aware of these resources, and of course, making the social studies teachers and the librarians in the schools aware of them as well. That is a way to kind of connect the dots and get the students to these resources. And then finally, I wanted to, just because these are some of the things that teachers, students might be less likely to be aware of, they might need a little help, a little push to not only discover these things, but to navigate some of these resources. But just go go, for example, to the National Museum of the American Indian. There is an incredible site, and if you don't know about this, you're an educator and you don't know about this, check it out. Native Knowledge 360. There's lots of educator resources here, but there are also plenty of primary sources. Yeah, there we go. Haudenosaunee lands in the American Revolution. Of course, the National Museum of African American History and Culture as well. And here again, just kind of going to the collections page. Again, here there are different entry points that you can use. I'm a big proponent of browsing. and also we're a museum program, so when we talk about primary sources, it's not just documents, right? Visual photographs, images, objects, these are all primary sources, so don't forget about those either. Of course, tribal museums and cultural centers, out in Allegheny, in Salamanca, you have the Onosogwende Cultural Center, a fabulous resource. You have, this is just an example, not from the state, but this is Jackson State, the Margaret Walker Center, the Center for Puerto Rican Studies in New York City has an incredible collection, and a lot of that stuff is available on their website digitally. So you can search through digital collections there. You don't have to go to the library, although I would encourage you, if you can, and if you can support students going there, I'd encourage you to do that. The Evo Institute, another great resource. It's a whole list here. Museum of Chinese in America. Many of these are in New York, not all of them. The Arab American National Museum is in Dearborn, Michigan. Japanese American National Museum in Los Angeles. The Louis Nunn Center for Oral History, that's in Kentucky. And then, of course, the Statue of Liberty Ellis Island Oral History Project.
Can I ask real quick? Can you folks make this presentation available somehow?
Yes, so I've already sent it to Jackie, what is Jackie? Stapleton, Jackie Stapleton, and she is going to make the educator resources available somehow. I'm not sure exactly how that's happening.
They'll be available.
Yes, yep.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Can I add just one thing about this that Will's talking about? We've heard a lot about kids that don't have access to, they can't come to Albany for the State Museum. And one of the reasons it's so important for people around the state, for librarians around the state, historical societies around the state, kids can get to their local historical society, their local museum, their local resources. And if they can find a topic that's local, they can do their research there and they can participate. They don't have to feel that they're at a loss because their school doesn't, we've had kids at History Day who actually went to Greece to interview the sister of the guy that came up with the pap smear, Dr. Pap, that from the Hellenic School in New York City, because they had huge resources. But the kids that don't have the resources can participate as well, but they need to use the local resources. And that's where all of you come in, because you make the resources available to every kid. And that's so important.
And it may be your collection, or it may be you're helping to guide them to some of these resources as well. Okay, very good. We've got a little bit of time for questions now. For either of
if you want to get excited, go to the national website and look at the replay. I think it's up of the awards ceremony that just happened, and you can see Don Wildman giving away. He's in the room giving
And
away.
watch the kids scream. If you're interested in being a judge, you can put your name and your email down, and we will contact you. Don't worry.
So do we have dates for 2025? For New York?
April, hold on.
Yes, we do.
We do. It's Palm Sunday, unfortunately, for some of us, but that's okay. We're going to be fine.
God.
Yeah, God forgive me. I'm only doing I'll have it for you in 2 shades.
The dates are difficult because you're dealing with all the holidays, Passover, Easter, and then when the schools have spring break, and when Oneonta allows us to have the whole campus.
Right.
Because it takes the whole
It's
campus.
so it is Palm Sunday. It's the 13th of April, right in the middle. Yep.
And if you judge, you get a free lunch.
Free lunch and some coffee in the morning.
And coffee and pastries in the morning.
and a warm sense of contribution to the creation of good citizens.
If you ever want to be reinvigorated as a historian, as an educator, this does it. Really, just to see the students come in.
Cordell?
I just want to give an endorsement for judging. I have judged a number of years in the website category, and it means everything to the kids. They get so nervous, and you're so earnest, and you're so kind, and they work so hard. So it really does. It is worth you giving up an afternoon and some prep time to give the kids that experience.
Yeah, there's some things that you can do a little bit ahead of time, like reading papers if you're into that, or even I think some documentaries.
We do the websites ahead of
And
time.
we do the websites ahead of time too. So, but yeah, it's great. And that's another thing is a part of the evaluation is your good reinforcement of what they did really well. And some handy suggestions for, this would improve this a little bit if you did blah, blah, blah. Or if you could add, what about this? So it's a very, a way you can coach them for the future. And also give them a strong pat on the back.
Yeah, I can just, same endorsement, not as a historian, but just as a human being. The adrenaline that these kids show, the enthusiasm and stimulus that it is, it's really refreshing and incredibly heartening. And it's also that easy way, not easy necessarily, but effective way to meet them halfway. Here's a bunch of kids who are really excited about history. To have an adult come to them and say, this is what's working, this is what's not. It's a part of the whole process, by the way. Some of these kids are lucky enough to go all the way. It doesn't matter if they do or they don't. They have an extraordinary experience at every level along the way. I just worked with the local kids down in Bronxville, and they were so into this thing in Bronxville that I invited them to the state contest to do a documentary, and they shot a
Oh.
documentary.
Oh, yeah,
Which
okay.
will get cut
Oh,
down.
I saw those kids. Yeah, right.
And two more came than the crew that we had at the regional.
Right.
And none of those guys had qualified for state. They asked their parents if they could go because they were so excited about doing the story of History Day. I mean, it's just so over the moon about kids being excited about learning that you really have to take notice and say, gee, this is one of these forums where the humanities is really can rocket forward.
I think the report, if you read the report, the assessment, not all of these kids are the highest achievers in their schools, and that's a really good thing because they get excited about something and they take it all the way, and it really helps kids that may not, be the highest achievers in a particular topic, but they get excited and and they really achieve. Okay, so sign up.
Don't be shy.
Don't be shy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.